Good evening, everybody. Wow, it's nice and quiet. Everybody's anticipating the gavel. Welcome to the May meeting of the Grosse Pointe Farm City Council. If we can all rise and recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Kazicki, roll call.
Councilmember Wood.
Here.
Councilmember Conrad Wolverine.
Here.
Councilmember Ritchie.
Here.
Mayor Darrow.
Here.
Councilmember Donovan.
Here.
Councilmember Soroka.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Dooley.
I will entertain a motion to excuse Mayor Tom Dooley for he's in trial up in Lansing.
So moved.
Support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 3, reading and consideration of the minutes of the regular meeting, April 10, 2023. Are there any changes or corrections to those minutes? Hearing none, they're approved as submitted. Item 4, I will entertain a motion to adjourn as the city council and to reconvene, to convene as the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Moved. So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 4, Board of Zoning Appeals, consideration of a variance request at 42 Hendry Lane. Who will be speaking on behalf of the applicant? Please come up to the podium and you can give us your presentation. Thank you. Oh, lose your mind.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We need name and address, please.
Mike Stein, 75 Vendome Road, on behalf of the applicant. With me today is Bill Thomas. He's the architect on the project that I'm going to speak about here in just a moment. We're here tonight to request a variance, actually several variances, 3 to be specific. Dimensional variances related to a proposed structure at Hendry Lane and Grosse Pointe Boulevard. We are asking first and foremost for a 16-foot variance into a 30-foot setback on the border of Grosse Pointe Boulevard and a 1-foot 6-inch setback into Hendry Lane. We're also asking for an accessory structure variance to build what I'm going to discuss in the front yard of 42 Hendry Lane. First and foremost, we have to discuss and establish a practical difficulty in order to.
Let's do this. Tell us about the project itself and then
Sure.
get into the
Sure,
the
absolutely.
items that have to be
No
satisfied.
problem. So the project itself is proposed to be what I'll call a package house, along with a gate that would go across Hendry Lane. The purpose of the package house is severalfold. First and foremost, it's a single location for the receptacles of garbage, yard waste, and recycling. There's a plan to work with DTE, and we have been working with DTE in order to place meters all in this package house. And just to back up, there are 4 residences on Hendry Lane, actually 5, 4 of which share common ownership. And so we'll get into a little bit more, but the purpose of it is to sort of reduce traffic, increase safety, etc. But the package house is about 253 square feet in nature. It is essentially hidden behind a row of arborvitaes and some fencing and so forth. But it has several uses, as I've explained. In addition to recycling and garbage and yard waste and DTE, it also provides a central place to drop off packages such as Amazon, UPS, and even the US Mail. So I'll turn over to Bill Thomas, the architect, to give you kind of a locational idea of where this package house is and some other information.
Sure. So my name is Bill Thomas, 524 7th Street, Rochester, Michigan, 48307. I'm the architect on the project. I'll give you a brief overlay of what we're looking at doing. We have Grosse Pointe Boulevard here, Hendry Lane here. Hendry Lane is a private lane. It's one of, I believe 6 private lanes within a, what's that? Wrong. Better? It's one of 6 private lanes actually in the Grosse Pointe Farms community. Being the fact that the entire road itself is owned by the residences on the border or basically abut the lane itself. So the package house will be located up here in the front corner where the gate we proposed going across Country Lane to limit access there. Package house, as Mike alluded to, this is a place to store recycled yard waste, garbage, and have a place for the packages to be delivered, mail to be delivered. A single point of location there instead of having the different vehicles that kind of proceed through the entire site plan itself to get to the further residences down the road. Being a one-lane road that's only 14 feet wide, any vehicle that egresses into that site is forced to either back out down 350-foot long driveway, back out onto Grosse Pointe Boulevard, or to try to back up into one of these driveways without any landscaping or a fire hydrant or other things that are actually in the way when they try to do that. It makes it very challenging for the Amazon trucks and for the UPS deliveries, again, for the need for the package house up front. All the deliveries can go to one single point. They can either park on Grosse Pointe Boulevard and enter into the package house, or they can pull up in front of the gate and immediately back right back out without having to traverse the entire length of Hendry Lane. The structure itself is essentially a 23-foot 10 or 24-foot long by 10-foot 8 wide structure, not very big at all. It's got an enclosed area on this side here where packages be delivered in a secure area where the mail goes, items like that for each one of the properties within that block. And then a kind of garbage collection recycle area here that will have access for the garbage truck to pull in to Hendry Lane, access the garbage, remove the garbage, and then take it out, not having to traverse again all the way through Hendry Lane. The elevations, as you guys saw in the package, are above here, just giving a character and style that's very similar to keeping the 42 Hendry, in which the property, other than the package house, is located on. It's got the same brick, same roofing details, same limestone surrounds, again, keeping in tune to what the Grosse Pointe community is, and materials are meant to reflect the residents of the property that sits on currently. It gives a brief overview of what the structures are, but Mike, you need to go through it.
Thank you, Bill. Any questions before I move on?
Can you tell us a little about the fence?
Sure. The fence matches what is existing along Grosse Pointe Boulevard. The posts here are 8 feet tall, is that
These
correct?
are 8 foot, yeah.
8 feet tall. And this area right here that I'm pointing at is 6 feet tall.
So that's same in keeping with what currently goes across Grosse Pointe Boulevard.
Right.
Existing fence that's here, it's been here since the 1930s.
So if you want to show me the gate, because that is not what is across Hendry Ave.
Order a new easel.
Not used to all these big giant boards.
Foldable ones.
Yeah. So the gate itself will look like this. So basically keeping again the same fence.
You gotta hold that out for us. I got nothing but that. Yeah. Just
Put
put
it
on-
here.
Yep, there you go.
Try to give it,
That's good.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not on the screen.
You can turn, I'll turn around in just a second for you.
It's in there. So the gate is going to be done in wrought iron detail, very in keeping to the. Turn it so you can see better. In keeping to the original historic fence that goes across the front on Grosse Pointe Boulevard. Again, contextually trying to make it look like it was built that way originally from day one. And so same wrought iron, same brick piers that are currently there, just continuing that theme on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sorry, I jumped ahead a little bit. We're going to discuss the elements that need to be shown whenever this board is considering a variance request. First and foremost, we need to show practical difficulty as that's defined in state code and adopted in Farms Ordinance. Essentially, touching on what Bill already talked about, it's a private, very narrow, one-way road. We didn't create the road. The road has been there for some time. It actually, we believe, was an actual driveway to 32 Hendry Lane at some point in time. It is not meant to accommodate these large types of trucks and that I've talked about, whether it be delivery, packages, garbage, yard waste, etc. In that sense, the property is unique to the area. We really don't have a situation that I'm keenly aware of where we have a road that's this narrow, that's privately owned. We can't widen the road to accommodate 2 lanes, it's just completely impractical. And without this variance, we can't build the structure. The structure, without the variance, would essentially be located at the front door of 42 Hendry Lane, more or less. As we talked about and touched on a little bit earlier, very difficult for the garbage, yard waste, and recycling. There's more traffic on this street than maybe would be expected. There are instances where cars will come down in the middle of the night and they think it's a gateway essentially to get down to the lake. There are numerous examples of, the curious car drivers and pedestrians coming down the road and just taking a look. Essentially, it's trespassing, and so that causes difficulties as well. As it relates to the accessory structure, the difficulty there is that there's essentially no rear yard at 42 Hendry Lane. And again, without that being the case, we need variance to put in the front yard. Otherwise, we can't put the structure, or any structure for that matter. No structure could be built on this front yard at all without a variance. Strict compliance with the ordinance would eliminate the possibility of that happening. So in looking at the practical difficulty, there are several elements or considerations that this board should take into effect. The first being the variance is in harmony with and serves the intent, purpose of the zoning ordinance. Considering the extent of the variance, so we're looking again for a 16-foot variance into the 30-foot setback along Grosse Pointe Boulevard, and 1.5 feet into the 15-foot setback along Hendry Lane. As I've mentioned, the structure will essentially be hidden behind existing mortar posts, wrought iron, and arborvitae, and you would generally have to enter onto Hendry Lane in order to view at least fully the package house from that area. Also have to look at the effect on government facilities and on the character of the district. As we've mentioned, we believe that this would be a benefit to the government facilities in that the garbage retrieval, recycling, yard waste would have to just do one point of stop rather than go all the way down this 14-foot roadway and either do a 12-point turn or back out. Again, DTE, one-stop shop, same with the mail-in packages, and there's no additional burden on fire and safety. We have talked with local law enforcement and discussed with them the intent to use a fob or other types of immediate access in the event of an emergency. There are examples of this where they do it already. One being, for instance, Crescent Yacht Club, I believe. They have a fob in the fire engines in order to gain access to that property. So similar type of situation. Next, the board needs to look at the effect on the character of the district. As Bill mentioned, the structure essentially is going to match 42 Hendry Lane in terms of the brick, the look, the feel, even the roof. The gate posts will match the iron, the brick and the iron along Grosse Pointe Boulevard that is already there. And so I believe that it really will enhance or add to, or certainly not take away from the character of the district. You gotta look at whether the proposed building is in harmony with the neighborhood and the intent of the code in terms of size, character, location, and intended use. Size is typical of an accessory structure, whether it's located in a rear yard or otherwise. Again, character, it matches 42 Hendry Lane. It's brick and it's beautiful. Location, it's not unusual to expect to see this type of a structure at the entrance to a lane or a driveway. It's not all that common in Grosse Pointe, but this is the type of structure, the use that you would expect to see. Next element has to do with substantial justice. Variance results in substantial justice, and you need to consider the public benefits secured by the ordinance. It's important to note that this is a private road, and it is, again, has become owned by a single family. Doesn't all that much matter. There has been talk of doing this when the other homes were owned by other individuals. It just never kind of came to fruition. Public has an interest in increasing safety and security. We have Nancy Cotton here tonight, and she will talk to you about some of the security and safety issues that she's experienced over the years. Again, it lessens the burden of government. We talked about that. Adds to the aesthetic of the neighborhood. This structure has no real impact in the surrounding area, except for possibly 41 and 42 Hendry Lane. 42 is the lot where this proposed structure would go. 41 is on the other side of Hendry Lane. And I believe, I've heard that there could be a letter of support that you received from those neighbors. Anecdotally, Nancy's had conversations with that family, and they're in full support of this, and they're actually looking forward to it. You also have to consider the difficulties as the variance is not granted. Homeowners are going to continue to experience pedestrians and curious drivers entering on the property. Again, private street, essentially trespassers. There are numerous instances, even as recently as this weekend or today, where folks wander and curious, have walks in the lake. Even instances of people using the pool deck in the backyard. There's a risk of property damage and of injury with the usage of the trucks. Bill will show you if you're interested to see. There's a fire hydrant. I think it may have been struck by one of the delivery trucks this weekend. But there's kids that play on the street. My oldest plays with one of Nancy's children, and there's kids over there on a regular basis. It is limited site, and it is a serious concern. And there's security concerns of the family. Again, with this pedestrian and vehicular traffic that are uninvited, you just don't know who's going to be there. And they have legitimate concerns. And they believe, and we believe, that this gate and this structure will help alleviate some of those concerns, whether it be an area to locate a camera or the gate itself. That all helps. You have to consider whether the difficulty can be solved by something other than a variance. And the answer is no. Talked a little bit about this. The purpose of the structure is defeated entirely if the variance is not granted. Again, it would be essentially at the front door of 4200 Lanes. You also need to consider whether the variance will substantially interfere or injure the rights of persons whose property is affected. In looking at this, we can look at some of the boards so you get a better visual. The only real impacted properties are 42 and 40, I would say 41 Hendry Lane. 42, obviously, because that's where the proposed structure will be built. 41, again, on the other side of Hendry Lane, kind of looks over. There's windows and they have a view essentially of this structure and of the road below. So they'll be able to see it kind of on a daily basis, and they're supportive of what we're requesting here tonight. You'll hear, I think, from some of the neighbors on Western Lane. You want to pull the boards up? And we've heard their concerns and so forth, but just to give you a sense of, and I don't know if you guys can see this completely.
My son said, sure.
So just to give you an idea of scale and sort of location, this is Western Lane to the north. The location of the structure is here. There are large arborvitaes along this rear yard line, and again, there's some coverage up front. So we have heard concerns that this will be disruptive in some way as it relates to the location of the package house. But just to give you an idea, it's quite a significant distance from the Western Lane folks. We can talk a little bit more about those concerns in just a minute. We've got to take a look at whether or not the variance, again, will interfere or injure the surrounding properties. Any interference or injury, again, we don't think there is any, but to the effect that there is a finding, it's not substantial or injurious, which is the standard. There's been some discussion around this request on service personnel using a side gate along Westwood Lane. We've, when we learned of it, we directed all of those service personnel to not park on Westwood Lane. They have been directed to either park on Henry Lane or along the boulevard if parking on Henry is not possible. Also concerned about large events and parties, essentially. Those are few and far between, but we will commit and ensure, to the extent that this variance is granted, that nobody will park during a party on Westwood. Last thing you need to look at is whether or not the variance meets the standards of Article 25 of the code. Those elements are as follows: request is consistent with and will promote intent and the purpose of the ordinance. The use or activity will be compatible with adjacent land uses, natural environment, resources, and the capacities of public services and facilities. Variance will promote the use of land in a socially and economically desirable manner and maintain the character of the area. And the use is consistent with the public health, safety, and welfare of the residents of Rose Point Farms. So we believe that all of those elements have been met based on the items that we've discussed here. Again, promotes safety, security, eases the burden on the government, has little to no impact on the neighbors. If there is impact, it is not substantial or injurious. The structure is consistent with the character of the neighborhood. It's hidden from plain view. And there's really nothing that's completely inconsistent with the intent of the code. The code is there to protect the sort of environment and the neighborhood feel, and we believe that this adds to that. So just a few other things. We had an initial application last summer for this project, ended up withdrawing it and took some feedback from some of you on the board. We actually shrunk the size of the package house and moved it, essentially, making it about 2 feet. Is it?
We moved it 4 feet from Grosse Pointe Boulevard and 2 feet from Henry.
Yeah.
In towards.
So we have taken into consideration some of your concerns that were voiced at that time. Again, we have Nancy Cotton. She would like to speak with you about some of the personal experiences she's had. And Sean Cotton, who's also the homeowner, couldn't join us tonight. He's got a school board meeting. He did submit a letter that I'd like to read into the record. I don't know.
We brought it.
I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, we got it.
Okay. And that's it. If the board desires, I'm happy to answer questions, give you further information, whatever it is that you might need.
We have Nancy come up first.
Well, let's do this. I'll wait for, if it's okay with the pleasure of the zoning board, I'd like them to ask more strategic questions on your submittal on the building, on the issues you've raised. To the extent that some of our questions might need to be answered by Mrs. Cotton, then we can have her come up as well.
Fair.
So I think that's fair, just because we would love to hear from her, but let's get through some of the technical
Okay.
stuff first and see what we got. So you guys good, the two of you?
Good, good.
All right, who on council has any questions? Lev.
Well, let me start out. Mr. Steins and
I should say ZBA, not council, sorry.
Mr. Steins and Mr. Smith, thank you
for being here. I have to compliment you. You're probably one of the first applicants to go through item by item all of the practical difficulty, technical directions that we have to face. So I really appreciate that. I'd like to just make a couple of comments and then maybe we could have a discussion or two. You did mention that back in July, this came to us as a proposal. You had looked for feedback. You'd gotten feedback. I think it's really terrific that you came back to the drawing board, so to speak, and you made some adjustments in terms of the location and the size to accommodate some of the concerns on the board. So I really appreciate that. Also, during the summer, if I'm not mistaken, there was some masonry work and some wrought iron work and some landscaping that was additionally put in, right along Grosse Pointe Boulevard.
It replaced, yeah, so the posts, the mortar posts were in disrepair, and the wrought iron between those, it's actually the same wrought iron, was just sent out to be refinished while the posts were being rebuilt.
And the effect of this is to have continuity of the site, especially when you're looking at it from the perspective of passing by on Grosse Pointe Boulevard. And also those arborvitaes, I suspect they're going to grow a couple more feet. Excuse me. And as a result, the gatehouse, if we approve it tonight, will be less visible for passersby on Grosse Pointe Boulevard. So I appreciate that detail. Let's discuss legally non-conforming, and Mr. Steins, you brought this up, and I think it's really important. Normally, if you were in compliance with the ordinance, you'd have a backyard setback, and you'd put this particular structure in the backyard. However, as you've mentioned, there's like 2 or 3 feet of backyard. It's like you can't possibly put anything like this in the backyard. And so as a result, if you're going to have an accessory building, you've got to put it in the front, and you'd have to have a variance. Was there any discussion to maybe add this to perhaps the side yard or someplace that would be, I'm sorry, a little bit more out of view, or is it just not going to be practical given the fact that you have to have it close to the curb?
Yeah, I think that there has been discussion and we did move it. But yeah, any further, we think that it starts kind of losing its value. And there were discussions about it. I don't know if Bill has additional sort of feedback, but the decision we sort of came to based on what Bill looked at, that this was kind of the furthest away from the curb that we wanted, or we thought that it would be useful.
Okay, so the legally non-conforming aspect of this site makes it very unique. That's a corner lot. There's nothing in the backyard. There's no way that you could possibly put a building in the backyard. It seems to me that there's been discussion about the width of the driveway. I don't know the width of the driveway. I eyeballed it today. I'm going to say 15 feet. I did happen to take a measurement of Deming Lane, which is probably half a mile down where I live, and a similar kind of a street that goes in off of Grosse Pointe Boulevard, and it's 20 feet. So it's an additional. Well, it's quite skinny. It is like a driveway. So to that extent, I think you're arguing that that is a unique part of this entire proposal here, which affects the package delivery and also the recycling and which is the reason for having your gatehouse up at the front. You have discussed the harmony of the site. McKenna has a letter before us. McKenna is our consultant. They have agreed that in terms of harmony, it's going to look fine. I guess that I'm compelled by your arguments. I would like to know a little bit more about what my fellow council members think, but I think the final thing that you've mentioned, which is really compelling, is that, and I don't believe I've ever seen this in the 12 years I've been on this board and on other boards as well, that when you give a variance to an individual, the city gets a benefit. That is to say that we're not going to have to take our trucks all the way down to the end of the property and then come back and all that. It's going to be much more convenient for our guys. It's going to save us time, that kind of thing on our pickups. So in terms of substantial justice, I think there's something to be said about that if we were to approve this project tonight. So overall, thank you very much for your letter. You did a very nice job in my view, and I appreciate it very much. So Louis, that's all I have to say right now.
Thanks, Love. Anybody else? Beth?
I thank you, the gentleman, for coming here, and I thank all the neighbors that are coming here as well as Mrs. Cotton. You know, back in May, I got a tour from many of the neighbors, and with more than a mouthful of complaints, and listened very attentively and asked the people of that street to make their voices heard. Since that time, in May, I have been down Henry Lane.
Is this
And I've
May of
trans-
last year or May, this like last week?
Last,
Okay.
I'm sorry, the fall,
Yeah.
the fall, last fall,
Fall,
last fall, excuse me, last fall. And since that time, I've been down Henry Lane, I've trespassed at least 6 times. And I have to tell
You're
you,
the one.
I have to tell you, from what I had heard this last fall, to where we are in present state, and my illicit visits came in April and in the beginning of this month. I really have not seen some of the different difficulties that many of the neighbors had voiced when I was back in the fall. I appreciate the practical reasons that you're asking for the variance. I think they are conforming to what we have in the spirit and the intent of this zoning board. I agree with the harmony. I agree with many of the different issues that were raised by my colleague Liv Wood. And I thank you for the presentations. I look forward to hearing a lot of other different voices tonight before we settle this issue. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
No comment.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. Thank you for the very thorough presentation. And like Beth, I look forward to hearing more from the public. I did have some questions because I do find the question of security very compelling. And I have not trespassed on Henry Lane, but I did take a look at it. And I'm just curious, as far as I recall, and I didn't notice seeing, is there any kind of indication that the street is private? Is there any kind of like signage or anything like that? Because I question, you know, whether signage might help a little bit because folks might not even know that it's a private street necessarily.
I pleaded ignorant.
Yeah, no, I mean.
I believe the sign's on order that says private road that is going to be posted on one of the outside posts. You know, we talked about a no trespassing sign and other sort of indications, and everybody's thought who was involved in that conversation is the sign really doesn't, at the end of the day, doesn't stop the folks from coming up. And so we did consider it. As I said, the sign's on order. We'll see, but the safety concerns are real. The security concerns are real. And Nancy can certainly talk to that, whether it be, you know, dangerous trucks and traffic to people entering out. I mean, I think we were just over the course of like 12-hour period, you know, here's the trucks kind of doing the 12-point turn as I indicated, but you know, these are just some examples, and there's more than this, but you know, pedestrians walking their dog and, you know, having them walk and so forth. These people don't look all that threatening to me, but you just never know. And, you know, security is subjective to some extent, right? And Sean and Nancy do have legitimate concerns for the safety of themselves and their family. They are relatively public family in this community. And, you know, there have been some instances, you know, where they feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my thing is, you know, and I mean, we got one letter from the gentleman who lives right at the corner of the main property that's going to be affected by this, and there's concern about people walking down the street. I mean, the reality is most of us live in a community where people walk down the street past our houses, and we feel safe. You know, given that this is one of the safest communities in America. But that said, I'm interested in the question of having a sign of some sort. My gut tells me that a good percentage of the people that are walking down this private street have no idea that it's a private street when they walk down it. And you're certainly not going to prevent someone who is actively wanting to get inside a private space, but most people probably don't even know that. The other question I had was, in terms of was it at all considered to just have a gate rather than also a gatehouse or as you call it, a package house? Was that an option? To just put a gate there that you can control and you could prevent access to the road that way?
Sure, but there's sort of different purposes, right? The gate is for, more security and safety, et cetera, and for use of what we'll call the structure of the package house. The package house is there, again, to consolidate some of the services like delivery, like meter reading, like garbage pickup. And that's the whole purpose of it. It's got a separate, and I would say, not distinct, but a related purpose to the gate. They kind of, sort of work in tandem in that form of fashion. Did we consider it? I don't know, Bill. If
It really, again, back to the vehicle, large vehicle traffic, that is not a standard road by any means. And any large vehicle, whether it's an Amazon truck or a garbage truck or a snowplow or whatever it is, creates a safety risk every single time it comes down there. That picture actually highlights the fact is that an Amazon truck, they're impacting the fire hydrant right behind it. And that is a daily occurrence, that those vehicles coming through there, not that they hit the fire hydrant every day, but they come back down there. The only place they can turn around is this tiny little pull in here, or they're pulling in the Sean Nancy's driveway, or they're pulling in the 33 Henry's driveway, trying to find a place to turn around. It's very tight. It's not intended for large scale vehicles like that.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly, if I had been on the council when this property was subdivided and these lots were created, might have done it a little bit differently for all of the reasons.
It was a different
laid
world
out.
in 1930s.
Yeah, exactly.
Was there might have been a village.
There might have been a village council or something. Well, I'm interested in hearing more from residents, and I'm sure I'll come back with other questions and comments afterwards.
Sarah, anything?
I do. I didn't know at this junction, we would be making comments whether in support or not. But I would have this council take the story in as well as all of our residents and the applicant. And this has to do with the whole concern of all of us having the expectation, not entitlement, but the expectation to be safe and secure in our homes, all of us. Last year, and I served on the Beautification Commission at the time of this incident. I was chairing the commission. And I was also on city council. We have an event for the Beautification Awards, where we take a period of time and go through the city and nominate homes. Once those homes are nominated, we are then given a beautiful package prepared by our Assistant City Manager, Derek Kozicki, where we toured these homes. Now, we're not allowed to go into the property, but we are allowed to go down those streets and view those homes. And in this one particular incident, a home that was assigned to me, the gate attendant, this is a road with a gate attendant. Now, I would like for all of you to know what I went through. I did not take offense because I said to myself, had there been an incident where the security had to be increased or awareness of security had to be heightened. I presented why I was there, had all of my credentials, didn't mean a thing, no problem, showed my professionally prepared packet by the city, gave them my business card. And they said, well, we still cannot allow you in, but what we will do is call the city. They called the city, but they also called the resident. And I so appreciate that. I am a retired ATF agent and always have my badge with me. Didn't mean anything because you said you never know who's who. In the time we're living in today, we cannot take anything for granted. So I appreciate the detail of this package and you stating the concerns about the welfare, safety and concerns about the residents on Henry Lane and the children as well. And so I just would ask that we all consider the importance of a family wanting to be protected, wanting to feel safe. And because in this instant, there are many houses on this road, and I was not allowed in. There was no gate. However, there was a guard attendant, and they grilled me, took me through a series of questions. And you know what? I appreciated that. So I rest.
Mrs. Cotton, since safety's come up with two zoning board of appeals members, if you want to speak now or you want to wait till later.
Sure, I can come up. Basically, we've lived on the street since 2009.
Sorry, I'm going to do this. I need your name.
Okay,
and-
Nancy Cotton, 33 Hendry Lane, Grosse Pointe Farms, Michigan, 48236. We bought the house in 2009. We absolutely love it. We love our street. I'm so thrilled that my sister is now living at 42 Hendry. My other sister stays in the guest house across the street at 32 Hendry. She lives in California, but she's with us every month. We've really designed like our dream scenario, but I would say the hardest part is just that people treat it like a street, and it's just not. And like people were saying, of course, walking, I walk all the time, I bike all the time, I love our neighborhood, but it's a walk to nowhere. I mean, it's literally 1, 2, 3, it's a tiny little street. There's nowhere to go. Many times I will say people end up in our backyards. I find people having wine in our backyards, letting their dogs run around in our backyards. It's definitely a strange situation. And I guess from a safety standpoint, besides like wanting to know who's on our driveway essentially, which is very important to me, the other thing is just the speed of cars that drive down there. They think it is a cut through to the lake, and it's not, and it's very dangerous and wild. And I guess even before it was just us, when it was the Eagers or the Pellerins, it's always been a community with children, always. And now it's become the house, like I'm home and the kids come over and I love it, but they use that little middle strip, the street, for playing, and it can get very, very crazy with the cars. 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, people thinking they're getting to the lake and they drive almost straight into the house at the end. So I guess that's my biggest issue with safety.
Thank
Do you
you.
have any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've got a couple quick questions. If approved, a lot of the letters mention the disruption of construction of the other accessory structure at the end of the block. That was the brick wall. So without what if this were to be approved, how would you not disturb the neighbors on Westwood with construction? And what's your schedule, timing, etc.?
I'll let Bill speak to schedule and timing. The disruption along West Wind had to do with a wall, mortar wall that was put up and some of the other tool equipment and such. That's not this. This is a much, much smaller project in terms of scale, complication, etc. If we, like I've said, we will commit to having all those construction trucks work through Hendry Lane, park on the boulevard or on Hendry Lane. And you guys can enforce it. I think that's, some of the complaints of the neighbors. They have a right to call law enforcement, public safety to enforce, the commitment that I'm making here today. Hopefully that answered you, Bill. Yeah, no, absolutely. This is something that I think can be contained to the entrance of Hendry Lane and along Grosse Pointe Boulevard.
Thank you. Any other questions from the zoning board? Okay, so now here's the time we open it to the public. We have not had a big crowd like this since COVID. So what I remind people is we do not have a 3-minute time limit for your comments. We also ask you to respect the fact that I will tell you that this council is very prepared and always has been. We have read every single letter that has come in, pro and con about this project. I'm not going to stop you from repeating yourself. If you want to read the entire letter into the record, it is already in the record. But we do have sometimes people come in and read a 3-page letter when we've all read it. I can tell you that this is a great team up here. They do their homework. You heard that we visited the site. We know what's going on. Even repeating amongst one another, Again, we try to avoid that, but that's why we don't have a time limit. So we want to hear every comment that you have. All your comments run through the zoning board of appeals. To the extent that you'll need an answer from the attorney or the designer for the applicant, we will usually go to those at the end of your comments or at the end of all the comments. So we don't have a back and forth between the audience and the lawyer and the construction person. So we just try to run this orderly as possible. And then I'll just let people come up one at a time. Again, name and address when you come up. And if you can, please try to focus your comments on this project. The accessory wall that was built within code. So we don't need to rehash some of the stuff that was already happening. You feel free to do it if you want to bring it up, but those things are already up. They were within the code. Mr. Baca reviewed all those plans and were within the zoning board requirements. So you guys can stand on the side for a few minutes. And then I'll take, gentleman's up here first. He's ready to go. So come on up, and I see that bum leg. I don't want you to stand up too long. Let's go. Name and address. Thank you.
He's got the wherewithal to do it.
Charles Rudy, I'm appearing on behalf of one of the residents of Westwood Lane, Jody Kamal. I'm also here.
What's her address? What's her address, please?
40 Westwind.
Thank you.
The residents of
Are
Westwood.
you appearing as an attorney, as a friend, or I need your name and address? I need your address as well.
I am an attorney and a friend.
Okay, so where is your work address? Your work address?
I am retired.
Home address?
Home address is 1111 Hall Street in Boyne City, Michigan.
Okay.
I've had surgery recently, and so I am, for that period of time during recovery, staying with Ms. Kamal at 40 Westwind.
Okay.
And so I'm familiar with the genesis of this whole project. But let me get to the point, and I do take heart with your comments. I do take to heart your comments that the board is well prepared. In that vein, as you know, then, we being the residents of Westwind Lane have put together a letter which in great detail summarizes our position. And I'm not going to read that. I'm not going to repeat it. I'm going to make a couple of comments with regard to it. But let me start with, get right to the chase. The plans, as they have been submitted to council, do not accurately reflect what exists on the ground. And let me be specific. When Henry Lane became a project, basically a compound, there was a fence on the north side of parcel B, which is 32 Henry Lane. It encompassed the entire north line of that. Since then, the owners of 42 Westwind, the Cottons, as they own all of these properties and they own companies that control them, they have, and these plans show, a continuous 6-foot-high masonry wall along the property line between 32 Westwind, 32 Henry, parcel B, and 21 Westwind. Now, what has happened and what irritates the neighbors, and all of them are here today, they are all, 6 of the 7 parcels on Westwind are represented today. Dr. and Mrs. Roberts, Dr. Stockman and Susie Stockman, the Hulls, Ms. Kamal, the Battens, and the Moores. They all opposed this variance request. And why essentially is when this property was developed, and the extent of the development is shown on attachment A to our letter. There's a 14-foot-high wall. There are pools, there are hot tubs, this is a massive development. And what happened was, before that wall was erected, Westwind Lane, which is up here, became the alley, became the construction entrance for this development. This we refer to as the party house because that's what the intent is. Since that time, once development, construction was essentially completed, that masonry wall went up, but as not shown on these plans, there is an opening in that wall. The opening in that wall has been, since construction ended, the opening in that wall has been used to service the pools, the hot tub. It will be used to service the generators and the generator and the air conditioning condensers. And what we're concerned with as this becomes a party house, it's going to also provide entrance for guests. Why? Because it's convenient. You can drive down West Wind and gain access to 32 West Wind. That's going to be exacerbated as Henry is restricted by this gatehouse and gate. So we can go through all of the issues with regard to a variance. And in our opinion, a variance, which is a requested exemption from the requirements of the zoning ordinance, for which the applicant bears the burden. They have not satisfied, in our opinion, any of the requirements for a variance. And they are summarized in our letter. I'm not going to go through them. One of them I do want to address is substantial justice. Substantial justice for the applicant, that is the Cottons in this case, and the neighbors, particularly the residents of West Wind Lane. There's a claim that security is that the Cottons will be deprived of substantial justice. It will be a substantial injustice to them. And the explanation is we need security. All of the residents of West Wind Lane, people walk by their house every day. We consider it an asset. We meet people that walk down that lane. We meet each other. There's free communication between neighbors. I've never been in a community like this where we pick up packages for neighbors. We shovel sidewalks for neighbors. We help them in all those ways that neighbors should do and which develop a community. On the other hand, security, we have one of the safest cities in the country. So so we think security is basically a misperception and certainly not the direction that we think this community should go to, which is hiding behind walls and gates and living in gated compounds. Now, so if you're asking for how can we protect the quiet enjoyment of the residents of West Wind Lane, how can we keep what was admittedly a busy construction and use of West Wind Lane as a construction entrance? It's an easy solution. Order that pedestrian gate be shut in accordance with their own plans. Make it, if West Wind Lane should not be burdened with maintenance activities, guests, visit parcel B on Henry Lane. If they want the road shut off, let them open the gate and let their guests come in through Henry Lane. And the way to ensure that, again, as I said, make your variance conditional upon closing the wall between parcel B, 32 Henry, and 21 West Wind Lane. Again, I think other people may want to make a comment here. I'm not going to repeat things in my letter. I trust that the council's reviewed those and we stand by them. But again, I think it's, as we said in the letter, this is not a relatively trivial dispute between neighbors as to whether a wall should be 4 feet or 6 feet. This is a concern by the residents of Westwind Lane that the essential nature of the community is being changed by permission through variances of development of walled and gated compounds. And we don't think that that is, we think it's an essential issue. We think one that merits calm and careful consideration. But that's the problem. Do we think that the building will be done in a beautiful fashion? Absolutely. That's not the nature of our dispute. There's enough money here at issue that there will be a beautiful structure. The issue is whether there is a need for this structure at all and whether that is necessary to guarantee security and even will guarantee security. So I will turn the matter over and I appreciate your attention. Any questions before I?
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, hi Chuck, a couple questions, thanks.
Could I ask you a favor, Lev?
Yes.
I am, as Washington said, I've gone deaf in the service of my country.
We did.
Could you? Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Conditions. If we were to condition this tonight with something that would say something or rather like all parking for parties or any other kind of what we might call extracurricular activities would be it would be on the Cotton's it would be the Cotton's responsibility to make sure that everybody parks there on their street rather than on your street. We'd specifically put that as a condition. Would that satisfy to some extent mollify some of the concerns of the residents?
I think it's going in the right direction, but I think what you want here is something that's self-activating. We don't want to have to come back with complaints that that's not being done. Closing that gate will by itself say, and that's a fence that was there before, that's a fence that's shown on their own plans. That will make sure that desire is effectuated.
It struck me that we've had so many letters here that I can't recall which one was which. But it struck me that the purpose of the opening in that wall was a friend gate. It was, in other words, something that would enable the friends from the Cotton family or the Cotton families to go back and forth. Is it really that intrusive for the residents of Westwind? Is that what we're referring to in this particular case? What was referred to, I think, as a friendly gate or a friend gate? Is that what we're referring to here?
The only friends that live on the other side of that gate are the Cottons and the Cottons employees. So if I'm having a party and I invite 50 people or 100 people, they should come through Henry Lane. They should not come down Westwind, perhaps park on Westwind or park on that property and gain access to the Henry Lane compound. The nature of Westwind is to service the 8 houses that exist on Westwind. If Westwind is now serving as the access to the party house, it's going to greatly increase the burden on Westwind and the nature of the community on Westwind.
Just that part.
I'm not sure how to solve that problem because it seems to me that Cottons have friends on Westwood Lane. Westwind Lane. I mean, I thought that somebody don't they own a house there on Westwind?
They own they own a house on Westwind Lane in which reside their employees.
So,
21.
so what you would propose would be to close off the gate, and then they would have to walk from the bottom part of West Wind out to Grosse Pointe Boulevard and come around onto Henry, right?
Yes,
That's your proposal? Okay.
exactly.
You also made a comment about the compound and how the gatehouse is gonna enhance this compound. My guess is that the compound's gonna exist whether or not we okay this gatehouse tonight or not. I mean, what they would do, it seems to me, if if it were me, I mean, I would just put a gate right there at Grosse Pointe Boulevard and make it so. The fact that we're talking about an accessory building in the front yard, I don't know how that's going to impact, create this, or not create this compound. I mean, that seems to be immaterial to me. So I don't get the connection between the connection of having the accessory building and the existence of the compound.
It's the gate. It's the fact that we can talk about gatehouse, we can talk about accessory building. What the essential thrust of the variance request is to shut off and gate Henry Lane. If you restrict the flow of traffic on Henry Lane, as it will unquestionably do, you're going to divert traffic onto West Wind Lane, particularly if there is an easy access to 32 Henry Lane.
All right. Okay. I think I've said enough. Other folks want to say something, I'm sure. So thanks for your comments.
Thank you.
Yeah. Julie.
Anybody else?
Well, I think you're going to address my comment. Thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to, for the record, to clarify, the Henry Farms LLC, or as we're referring to them, the Cottons, own 21 West Wind Lane. That's correct. So that is also their property. I understand that. I just want to make sure that that is a fact.
As we stated in our letter, I apologize, I think it's a footnote, but we are not contesting that all of these parcels, the four parcels on Henry Lane and 21 West Wind, are owned by either the Cottons directly or corporations, LLCs that they own or control.
All right, anybody
Yes,
else?
thank you.
All right, who's next? Names and addresses. please,
Renee
or address.
Roberts, 33 West Wind Lane, Donna Batten, 30 West Wind Lane. Closing off access to Henry creates parking on Grosse Pointe Boulevard. Exiting West Wind has become a safety issue to the pedestrians and vehicle traffic when trucks and cars servicing Henry are parked on Grosse Pointe Boulevard too close to West Wind. The residents of West Wind have notified the city and police about this problem numerous times. In any case, perhaps a no parking here to corner sign will help alleviate this issue. Grosse Pointe Farms is a safe and open community. Allowing the gatehouse and gate will create a trend that will close up the community. Is this a future version for Grosse Pointe Farms? Granting a variance for the conveniences and supposed hardships of Henry residents should not be detrimental to West Wind residents. Henry residents want to keep their street safe and quiet, but so do we. I wonder how Henry residents would feel if the roles were reversed. Just one thing that isn't written here, but as Chuck was describing this opening, these trucks come down to service the pool. I mean, there's no access. So the way all this big new pool and spa, that all the trucks come right down and park right by my driveway. We asked City Council to please consider responses submitted by West Wind residents and deny the variance. If the council is compelled to approve the variance, it should be with conditions prohibiting the use of West Wind Lane for Henry deliveries, maintenance, services, functions, guests, parking, and other non-emergency purposes, including the use of 21 Westwind for such activities. Thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
questions?
Yeah.
Questions, anybody? No? Thank you
So,
very much.
I just want to say one thing. Our concern is traffic on Westwind. And if there is an opening and there's access to the pool and the kitchen and all the facilities they have back there, we don't want to see trucks coming down and repairing. We don't want to see landscape trucks. So that is a huge concern with us. And then unless it's a condition of the, if you pass the variance and unless it's a condition of it, there's no saying that that can't happen.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming to me. Thank you for being patient. Come on up. Name and address, please.
Cameron Shorts, 21 Westwood Lane.
Amy Shorts, 21 Westwood Lanes.
The residents behind me speak of neighborliness. I know my wife has submitted a letter to the council around some of the actions that some of the neighbors, 21 Westwood, have taken against us. It's sad. We were very excited to move into the house. We do not work for the accountants. I'm an independent contractor. I work at their gym. My wife is Nancy's business partner and best friend of 12 years. So the employee-employer relationship isn't there. My wife runs 2 of the studios that Nancy owns. They're in it together. My wife also runs the store that Nancy owns the building. They're in it together. They've been best friends for 12 years. Amy's helped raise Nancy's 2 children. They've been together at the hip nonstop. As far as the servicing and the gate, we use it quite often to take our 8-month-old daughter over to visit with Nancy and Sean almost daily. I find it offensive that the neighbors of 21 Westwood Lane watch our comings and goings. It's kind of despicable to me. They're kind of watching 2 young neighbors.
We gotta watch this,
Understood.
watch the language. Just trying to, we're still gonna be neighbors after all this, so we gotta keep it going.
As far as servicing goes, any truck that has ever parked there has parked well onto our property. We've never once had a party. If we do have a party, they park down our driveway, well out of sight of any of the neighbors. Again, I will fully admit, there have been parks trucked. There have people that have walked through that gate. It is sporadic. It's not to the level that's been stated to this council. And when they do it, it's on our property line, out of the way of any of the residents of Westwood, or of the residents of Westwood Lane. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, see nobody else? Oh, come on, let's go, man. Get in line, folks. Let's go.
Clarify one thing, Mr. Steins mentioned a letter from Sean Cotton. What letter was it? I don't know.
Just got it.
There was a letter that came to the council
just came
today.
Okay, so that's something that we not aware of then.
Okay.
If that would be shared, could be shared.
Oh, yeah, I need your name and address. I know you're familiar
Roy
with this.
Moore, 25
Yes.
Westwood Lane. So there's been a lot of talk about security issues. My wife and I had the same issues at our house, which is at the end of 25 Westland with a circular driveway. We get cars, people walking that use our driveway to make a U-turn to go back up to Westland Lane. It's kind of like universal to streets that don't go through to the lane. We have pedestrians that walk with their dogs or not. Same issues as Nancy Cotton was speaking about. The gate that has been referred to as a pedestrian gate or a friend gate has been serviced that I have seen every Thursday afternoon by the pool maintenance people. They use that and they go in there, and I have not seen, maybe this Thursday they'll stop. If they would, that would be nice. But if we condition this grant of this variance upon prohibiting maintenance people, party people, guests using that entrance and using Henry Lane, because Henry Lane, as Mr. Thomas says, only 14 feet wide. Westwood Lane is only 19 feet wide.
How far,
19 feet,
19.
a difference of 5 feet. There's not a whole lot of difference between the two lanes. We have, so we both lanes have the issues of trespassers.
Sorry, hold on a second. I mean, Derek, do you hear that feedback?
Yes, I don't know if that's the first time heard it
Okay,
since he got to the point.
there you go. Give it a little move there, see if that.
Yeah, see if that helps. How about now?
There you go.
There we go. And again, to me, they can have as far as a package house, they can have a lean-to surrounded by arbs on Henry Lane in that front line of 42. It won't bother me, I agree. Restricting access to Henry Lane with the gate is what bothers me. We have congestion on Grosse Pointe Boulevard. School year, you got the academy, you've got St. Paul. People line up in the morning, in the afternoon to pick up their kids, drop them off. That continues on past Lane towards Westwind Lane, towards Henry Lane and Westwind Lane on both sides. There's no getting around that. And to have a lane that's restricted, I think it's just going to further exacerbate that situation. And I think, and Roberts talked about maybe getting that corner cleared with a sign. That would be nice, a 20-foot clearance, because when you leave Westwind Lane, you look both ways. You're praying sometimes with the traffic coming through. And you don't know, if you can I avoid being hit, T-boned when I'm leaving my street. That is concerned. So I think we need to address that type of thing. The deliveries, I mean, Cam, I don't know if I've told you, but, and Amy, we get a lot of UPS, FedEx, Prime that come into our driveway and think it's 21 Westwind Lane. So I have to say, no, pick up your package, put it back on your truck, use the private lane to go down to 21 because you're delivering it to 25 Westwind Lane. I mean, you do that because of the neighbors. Try to be friendly, try that type of thing. I mean, that is the concern that we have, is to continue to be neighborly, as Mr. Sean Cotton said in my, as I pointed out in the letter I addressed. He said he loves Grosse Pointe because Grosse Pointe residents care and concerned about others. This restricting access and shutting off Henry Lane only says to me that they're concerned about only the counties. I think we need to broaden the perspectives and include more of the community. Chief, I think tonight was the first time I heard about the POB, because many summers ago, there was an electrical fire on the telephone pole between 21 Westwind Lane and a house in Windward. And the fire hydrant for Westwind Lane is right in front of my house. I had public safety people come down with their vehicles, park, one in my driveway, one by the Roberts home. Public safety people running down. It was July afternoon to fight that fire. They put it out. And I'm concerned that if you shut that off, shut Henry Lane off, if 32 Henry Lane, which is a wood frame house, has a fire, and the Roberts house is only maybe 10 to 12 feet from that, if that fire arcs over, you're gonna have a real problem, dealing with that fire and avoiding the loss of not only property, but the loss of lives. So I think there needs to be some serious thought about restrictions if you're gonna restrict Henry Lane access. And that's my 2 cents.
Any questions? All right, thank you. Appreciate it. Anybody else? Come on up, Mr. Jensen. Name and address.
Good evening, Dan Jensen, 336.
That guy.
I don't have a dog in this fight, but I have some friends on both streets. And I went there today just to check it out, make sure I was comparing apples with apples, and I went down Henry Lane to the end, and there was nowhere to go. So I started backing out, and some other guy comes in off of the boulevard into Henry Lane and realizes he's stuck. So he's doing the 6-point turn, 12 points a lot, the 6-point turn. I had to pull into the one driveway, back into it, back out, back in to get out. It's 11 Year Street's a little wider, but you kind of have the same thing. But there, when you get in there, there's no way to get out of there. So garbage trucks I don't worry about because they've got the dumpsters. Dumpsters probably go in there and get the trash anyway. But the recycles, any lawn crews, you get stuck in there. There's no way out. So you're either backing in and driving out, or you're backing out after you drive in, and there's no way to avoid it. So I went over to Westwood. I wanted to see what they were looking at Westwood, and I did see the gate. But I had to go around a contracting crew that was dealing with some bushes and dirt or whatever at a Westwood house. So they were there taking care of that house as well. I don't know how you can restrict on a public street, which Westwood is, parking for the grass crews or the pool crews or whatever. But I'm sure the Cottons would try to advise, when at all possible, their pool crew maybe to use their driveway, because they have that little cutoff at the end there, and try to reduce that complaint. But to restrict parking on a public street because of another private street is very difficult to do, as you know. So as far as parking on the boulevard goes, we do that all the time. Always, it's the widest street in Farms, I believe. So if we can park on the boulevard and utilize that, I think the vast majority of times they would. The gate, I think, is a great idea. That fence is kind of near and dear to me. The wrought iron fence there. In 1971, one of my best friends, my next door neighbor, was killed on his motorcycle right there at Henry Lane. Kevin Corbett, when he did the, she was supposed to turn left, he went around her right into the Henry Lane fence. So if they're going to copy that fence, I think that's great. I don't think, as far as safety goes, I keep hearing compound, but I think it's great if you can afford to do that on your street. They're going to post it private, which it isn't right now. There's no posting on it right now. That's fine, but I don't see a problem with that. And as far as the Westwind road complaints, we can, through the director and deputy director here, put the signs of no parking here to corner and give them a much better entry or exit, especially off of Westwind, so they can exit safely onto the boulevard without getting T-boned or get hit that way. So I actually have concern. But I think it'd be great for the Henry Lane. I think it'd be great for that architectural wall that's been there since 1930, I believe. As you recall, that was an estate at one time. That was one of the ways in. Beautiful place, but that it combined with I think most of their concerns can be addressed with the assistance of public safety, and hopefully, if the Cottons can advise some of the contractors, when at all applicable, to use their driveway or Westwind. But again, if you have a large grass crew truck pulling a trailer, getting it in Henry Lane is just as tough as getting it out. So they may have to utilize Westwind for that hour, half hour. But Westwind uses it too. They were there today when I was there. So again, I don't have a dog in that fight. I have friends on both streets. So it's just a peculiar street. It's really a weird street the way it's built. But I don't think a gate's going to hurt anybody either way. And as far as the structure goes, from what I understand, the structure will be as cool as the house on the corner, slate roof even. It just sounds like a win-win. And you can't really see it with the 16-foot arborvitaes that back up to the residences on Westwood. So that's my 5 cents.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm John Roberts. I live at 33 Westwind Lane. I just have one comment. I have a novel solution to this problem. I think there's adequate resources on Henry Lane to widen the street 5 feet. Thank you.
All right, anybody else? Seeing as such, public comment is closed. Now to the zoning board of appeals. Any additional comments from my colleagues? Neil? Go left, we'll start left this time.
Left to right. So I thank everybody for their comments today. I want to say a few things about, I've been only on council for now almost 4 years. I don't think I've ever gotten more letters about a single variance request. I asked earlier, and, you know, I'm sure others have gotten it, but this is very well analyzed, and I appreciated the feelings on all sides of the issue, frankly. It's a very unusual street. It's a very unusual request to put up a gatehouse. You know, I think there are a couple of instances of gatehouses in the farms, but I don't think there is one on a private road where all of the residents are owned by a single person. And I will admit, I don't love the idea of Grosse Pointe Farms becoming a collection of compounds. That said, as Lev very wisely pointed out, the reality is that is not up for debate at the moment, and nor should it be, as how the ordinances are written right now. If we would like to change the ordinances at some point down the road to prohibit the creation of multi-house residence, multi-house compounds, that would be one thing. But I don't think necessarily we can consider that in the thought process about this gatehouse. But the other thing I just add is, the thing that came through reading all these letters is how disappointing it is to have this kind of vitriol between folks who, as the mayor joked a little bit earlier, you guys are all going to be neighbors after this is over. And I would hope that there would be a way to find a neighborly solution to the challenges that the folks on Westwind have raised, and the very legitimate concerns that the folks on Hendry have. Frankly, I would love, it seems like most of the concern at this point from the folks on Westwind is about the friend gate. And, you know, I'm not sure it's something that we can do, particularly in this variance request, but it would be an extremely neighborly gesture for the residents on Hendry Lane to offer to close that gate and just no longer use it or eliminate it entirely as an act of goodwill and faith and commitment to neighborliness amongst the folks on the road. I understand that would be an inconvenience to the residents that are living on 21 Westwind, who are good friends of the Cottons. But it seems like that might be the easiest approach. I think the former public safety director made a wonderful point that we should deal with the question of the blind entrance on Westwind. I think we can deal with that as a separate but related matter. But at the end of the day, I would like us to arrive at a solution that maybe isn't what everybody wants, because that's impossible, any sort of compromise, but one that gets people into a place where they feel comfortable and hopefully can enjoy some beers together on that beautiful house at the corner at the back of the lot.
Recorded communication, council member.
Honorable Mayor Darrell, I respectfully request that you add into the record by a full reading of Mr. Sean Cotton's letter in support, of course, of his own variance. I think what some of the neighbors have addressed have been answered, and they are also enforceable. It's a very detailed letter, and I certainly would appreciate a full reading of it into the record. Thank you.
I think some of that will be, if we move forward, I think we'll address some of the issues that
Thank you.
Mr. Cotton
Yes,
indicated in that letter.
thank you.
Lev, anything more?
Sure, I thought we were going to Joe and then.
Oh, I'm sorry, Joe. Yeah, I was bouncing back. Joe, sorry. If you have anything, Joe?
I'm all set.
All right, sorry about that. You're right.
I
She's
just
next.
want
She
to
has Beth's
remind
next, yes.
everyone, and you know, a reminder to our council members as well. We're dealing with a variance on an issue here and not on all the issues that have been voiced tonight. This is a board of zoning, okay? It's a zoning board. So we're dealing with a variance on a specific item with this. Now, you understand that there are other issues. Perhaps some of this can be conditional in some, whatever we decide to put in as a proposal for this, and whether or not we vote for or against this, this variance. But again, just a reminder, It's not everything that has been said here tonight. This is on one particular issue with the gatehouse. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President.
Mr. President, yes,
You got promoted. You got promoted.
I am only 59.
I do have a few things to say. So regarding, and Beth is making an important point. I mean, tonight we're talking about the gatehouse variances only. There are other mechanisms working through the city to effectuate change and hopefully solve problems that the neighbors have. But regarding the gatehouse variance itself, the applicant presented us with a draft back in July. They came back to this spring with significant changes. I'm impressed with that. They've also done some very significant masonry work. They've added some landscape, which is going to be a benefit not only to the being able to not see that gatehouse if we approve it tonight, but also it looks very, very nice. We've discussed tonight the issue of legal nonconformity, the fact that this is a corner lot, the fact that there's absolutely like 2 feet or less behind the house to the fence. So there's no possible way that if the applicant wanted to comply with the ordinance, they'd be able to put a building anywhere except for apparently in the front. And they need variances for that. The McKenna letter, as well as the applicant, have talked about character and harmony. We all agree that the Cottons have very good taste. It's going to look nice if we approve that tonight. The uniqueness of the property is really critical when we're talking about practical difficulty. The road is private. It's very narrow. It's almost like a driveway. It's certainly a very unique property in terms of the legal nonconformity. So for those reasons, I would plan to vote for the project. However, I know that there are some people who might want to make some conditions, and I'm very willing to listen to more conditions if we have some.
All right, so I've been relatively quiet, rare. As Lev, I'm inclined to vote in favor of this project for a number of reasons. One, I think the issues in terms of the requirements of the ordinance have been satisfied. We've been working, this original application came into us July of last year, so we're well into our almost 10th month with the administration, going back and forth with requested changes, and most have been made. The impact is the building itself right now and the gate. The gate is over 23 feet away from the public right of way. The building is 16 feet from the public right of way. My original house on Cloverleaf was a whopping 15 feet from the right of way, built in the 50s. So I think that in terms of the building itself, we haven't heard a lot of comments about anybody talking about the building itself, other than I think those of you said really the issue is the Friends Gate. It will be a relatively low building. I think the impact on the neighborhood will be nominal. The applicant said in the letter today, which you guys didn't see, some of you didn't see unfortunately, Mr. Cotton indicated that he did not know that the pool people were doing it. He has now instructed the pool group and all other contractors to not use that gate. It will be, the code will be given to friends and family members only. So that is something we can watch for on Westwind. And the comments, I think Director Hutchins, Chief Hutchins has heard, and Deputy Director Rogers can look at the no parking sign on the boulevard to give you all some more room to get out. The road itself is likely one of the narrowest in our entire community. And it's not just easy to widen a road, unfortunately, with underground piping and fire hydrants, etc. I will tell you, trespass signs alone don't work. I think, unfortunately, people more today than ever are ignoring anything. When I was living on Waverly for a couple of years, people had no problem walking right past the sign on the drive off of Lakeshore. It said private road, no trespassing, and walking right up that driveway to walk to Waverly, right across the owner of the house on Lakeshore. I live on Chalfont on the golf course. People walk right across some of the open lots, including ours at the corner of Chalfont and Morass and another one, walking their dogs. I'm sitting in my backyard. They're just walking on the golf course, and they don't belong to the club. They don't have a house. They just decided, what the heck, I'm going to walk on the golf course. People are getting a little too close You know, I think I felt pretty comfortable in my backyard, but you know, a couple dogs have gotten loose. And my dog thankfully is well trained and just sits there and says, whatever. But people just ignore things. So that's an unfortunate part of where we are in our society today. And most important, one of the most important things too, the person at 41 who's can be looking out, as we said earlier, gave us a letter of approving the project, and they're directly impacted because they will see the project. So overall, I think the ordinance conditions for some variances here have been met. I hope that everybody leaves here in the spirit which we all come together often, not in these settings, but in neighborly settings and in good times, and understand that we are all privileged to live in this community. Every day, I feel happy that I'm here. And I want all of you to leave here today, no matter what the outcome, and understand that we all have to work together to continue to make this a wonderful place to live, and for our children to come back and come here and move back if they so choose. And we can make this place great for another 100 years. This council, everybody's room will be long gone in 100 years. I think of what some things are going to look like down the road. So please, when you leave here, let's keep our powder dry and let's try to look past this and be good neighbors. So,
Council, yeah, Mr. Mayor. I've been intrigued by the idea of some sort of like, concern. One thing I'll just note, like the idea of, I want to elevate what Mr. Jensen said in his public comments. I don't think we can restrict the rights of various members of the community from using roads. And so again, at the end of the day, I think the decision about the Friend Gate has to be one of the owners of the Hendry Lane properties. And I wouldn't want to, even if we could institute some sort of rule that would say you can't use it, you can only use it for XYZ function. That just creates a police state between all of their neighbors where everybody's watching and looking to report on someone doing this and someone doing that. But again, the solution would be best served by the residents of the Hendry Lane is to decide, hey, this is a problem for our neighbors. Let's go ahead and get rid of it so that it's not a problem, and have a small inconvenience to our residents at 21 Westwood.
And I think Mr. Cotton also indicated that they would encourage anybody coming to visit them to not park on Westwood. But encouragement, again, as we know, is different than enforcement. We get it. But for them to throw that olive branch out there, make every effort that their construction is not coming through that gate, that workers, electricians, anybody coming to use that gate, they will tell them not to. And same thing if they have people over for some celebration, a birthday party or whatever, they just tell, please don't park on Westwood Lane. Now, you're not going to prevent everybody from listening to your encouragement. But the fact that they're willing to do that is a good start, hopefully in the right direction.
Yeah, and the only thing that I would add is, again, I don't think it's something that we can do as a matter of ordinance, but encourage, because the owners of the Hendry Estates are, also own 21 Westwind. I wouldn't want that to be like a back parking lot, right, for parties. Now, I will say, I took a look at that entrance, and it's not exactly like a welcome to our backyard sort of kind of place. So I think calling it a pedestrian gate is a little much. It definitely seems like a service entrance, but I'll just, I think at the end of the day, I don't think that's something that we can deal with in a resolution regarding this gatehouse.
I think we can acknowledge that they're going to make every effort to make sure that doesn't turn into that.
Okay.
What is the will of the zoning board of appeals, please? Mr. Rishi?
I'd like to make a variance request.
Sure.
Go ahead. CBA.
I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals approve the variance requests originally submitted in July 2022 and supplemented on April 25th, 2023 by Mr. William Thomas, architect, on behalf of the owner, Henry Farms. As proposed, the applicant desires to erect a small structure measuring 23 feet by 10 inches by 10 feet 8 inches by 11 feet 4 inches in height for the purpose of consolidating refuse collection, provision of utility services, mail/package delivery,
plus provide safety and security to the Henry Lane residents. It is important to note that Henry Lane is a narrow private road rather than a public right-of-way. The proposed design of the project includes a gate across Henry Lane, which is set back a significant distance from the nearest public right-of-way street, Grosse Pointe Boulevard. To reach our decision approving the requested variances, we've reviewed Matt Baca's memo dated April 28th, the applicant's application for hearing dated April 25th, the detailed review letter from McKenna dated April 28th, the applicant's comments tonight, and the written comments received from the neighbors and their comments tonight. Henry Lane consists of 4 parcels, all accessed by a narrow private road, Henry Lane. Title of the 4 parcels are held in separate entities, and this will become important in connection with one of the conditions I will propose at the end of this, for this approval. The location of the proposed package house will allow Henry Lane residents the ability to receive packages when out of town. Have all electric meters in one location would allow for safe and efficient readings of the meters by TE personnel. Garbage, recycling, and all yard waste will be all located at the package house, thus eliminating individual house pickup. The package house height would be less than a basketball board on a pole. Allowing these variances will provide the residents with a higher level of safety and security throughout the entire property. The variances are in harmony with and serves the intent and the purpose of the ordinance, because the variance will not result in a substantial variation from the requirements of the ordinances. The variance will not result in increased population density. The variances will not adversely affect governmental services or the character of the district. The proposed package house is in harmony with the construction of the type of surrounding residence. The variances will result in a substantial justice being done, because if the package building variance is not granted, there's really no practical alternative in terms of location of this accessory structure. The property in question is unusual because the lot is a non-conforming corner lot having no rear yard on a dead-end private road. There is no way to rectify the current situation without granting a variance. The noted practical difficulties are not self-created. Approval of these variances are subject to the following conditions: proper permits to be pulled for the project as required by Department of Public Service, proper landscaping to screen the new package building as indicated, city services for snow removal, etc. on Henry Lane would be canceled. The owners of the residence on Henry Lane will be required at their own expense to maintain and repair the private road. The City Department of Public Safety must have 24/7 access to the gate, of opening the gate so that fire, ambulance, police services will not be impaired. The cost of maintaining and repairing the package house and the gate will be a shared expense among all the owners of the lots on Henry Lane. We must contemplate the possibility that in the future, one or more of the existing Henry Lane lots might be sold or otherwise conveyed, or might become subject of an approved lot split. In any of those cases, the future owners of any lot that is sold, conveyed, or split must approve the continued use of the package house and the gate across Henry Lane. In the absence of such approval by any future owner of any of the Henry Lane lots, then the package house and the gate must be removed. With respect to the Windward Lane, there is to be no vehicular or pedestrian access to the Henry Lane parcels. The Windward Lane is not to be used as a staging area or a parking area for any activities at the Henry Lane parcels, Westwood, excuse me, such as pool working, construction, etc. Owners of the Henry Lane will make every effort to limit the access to the pedestrian gate which is to be coded for family members. And I believe that is
Family and friends, they said.
friends and
Right,
friends,
yeah, family and friends.
family and friend members. That is my motion.
Valid motion, Mr. Burgess?
Yeah, I want, the record needs to be clear that the condition pertaining to vehicular and pedestrian access was west wind.
West
Yes,
Wind,
West
yeah,
Wind. Not
yeah,
Wind.
West Wind. Yeah, I get those two.
Yes, West Wind. Anything else?
No.
I'll support the motion, Louis.
Vicky, roll call, please.
Councilmember Wood,
Yes.
Councilmember Conrad Wilbrady,
Yes.
Councilmember Ritchie,
Yes.
Mayor Theros,
Yes.
Councilmember Donovan,
Yes.
Councilmember Soroka,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Blue.
Absolutely. All right, motion carries. Do I have a motion to adjourn as the zoning board of appeals and to reconvene as the city council?
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, good luck with your project. Please, keep it clean and,
Well, thank you.
yes, don't bother neighbors in the next street. Thank you. Don't leave Westman alone. All right. Yes, let's adjourn for 5 minutes for a little break, please, and then we'll reconvene at 8:45.
Yeah.
This looks odd. Last fall.
Oh, yeah. Someone shot it.
They had.
Yes, they.
I should have you.
He didn't get my copy. Did he?
No, you jumped the gun. I could have told you.
Well,
You were Mr. Eager, me sitting on the.
Well.
Yes, I was prepared. So there's no
I tried to see it.
Rest of those fast. Yeah.
I was too busy reading the first.
You're good at that. You can let
The notification.
Nobody talks. Yeah, nobody talks. Yeah, it's. Yeah, it's really for picking up. You get a little bit of. Yeah,
Go somewhere in the sun?
Yeah, I was out in the sun yesterday.
Yes.
That was good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, that was five counties. Right?
Yeah.
Person across the street, and that person.
Same.
Because I used to live, so I actually know that they're.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But it just is, that's how it's.
He was saying we got some better sticks back there. They were really much. We got it here.
No.
Yeah, no, I.
And it was a sizable house. It was a pretty nice
Oh,
house.
it was a 6,000 square foot house.
Yeah.
Well, for an empty, just make it double lot.
For his backyard.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, let's go. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, perfect.
Take your time, Neil. We got all night.
Go, Soroka.
Yeah.
I'm talking to Barnes residents. There's nothing more.
Yes. Well, Charlie will wait to the end for you, so it's
Yeah,
okay. He's like, what? Are you gonna stick around? It's budget time, you know. We're missing, it's so hot in here. When's the AC going on, Mr. City Manager?
Well.
Tomorrow, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. We have a good crowd today. All right.
Okay.
Item number 5, public hearing regarding the proposed tax millage rate and budget for fiscal year ending June 30, 2024. I will turn it over to Lev Wood, our chairman of the Audit and Budget Committee. Lev?
Thank you, Louis. Couple of talking points first before I turn it over to Tim to go through a slide presentation. The Budget Committee, the Budget and Audit Committee, which consists of Louis and John and I, met with staff back in March. At the time, our committee had proposed to staff a 0.5 mil decrease in our tax rate, half a mil decrease in our tax rate, for two particular reasons. One is that since almost forever, we've been hearing that our taxable values would be going up in the state of Michigan because of the rate of inflation. Everybody was going to take a hit in terms of a 5% increase in their taxes. Even if our tax rate would stay the same, we still have a tax increase because of that particular reason. The second reason that we wanted to have a tax reduction is we were looking a little forward. As many of you all know, the future has us being engaged in a very important sewer separation project. It's going to be extremely expensive. We're going to have to pay that through our tax, a small tax increase. And it was our committee's feeling that we wanted to lessen that blow for the future for our residents. We went back and forth a little bit, negotiated that down to 2.5, which is where we
0.25.
Excuse me, 0.25, a quarter of a mil tax reduction, which is still very, very good news for our residents. And I'm very delighted that staff was able to say yes to that. In terms of some particulars for the budget that we're looking at here tonight, for our next fiscal year, our general fund budget is going to increase to $18,895,000, which is a slight increase from the last budget. As I said, our overall tax, our millage rate will be going down 0.25 mils. We still have, and I'm very proud to say, and our budget committee makes it a goal, that we will continue to be the lowest, we'll have the lowest tax rate of all the gross points. The average residential home we'll see an increase of about $118 in city taxes due to taxable value increases combined with the decrease in our millage rate. So there's going to be a slight increase in taxes going to our homeowners for this year. A couple of highlights, as most of everybody knows, roads are of particular importance in our budget. We anticipate this year that we're going to spend $1.8 million in road funding. The capital projects fund budget for this year is $3.1 million. That includes $208,000 for public safety vehicles and equipment, $309,000 for public works vehicles and equipment, seawall repairs, that's money from the state, fire apparatus, city hall building improvements, sidewalk repairs, and many others. I'm extremely proud to present this budget tonight. Our committee, I think, worked very well with staff and with Tim and Shane. We're very appreciative of the cooperation that we've got. And most importantly, we're going to have a little slight tax relief for our residents, which is always a very good thing. So I guess those are the highlights. Tim, if you'd like to go ahead and give us some more details.
Sure. You stole my thunder on a lot of the things I was already going to say, so.
Yeah, okay, sorry.
May I make one comment before you go, Tim?
Sure.
Well, I appreciate the 1/4 reduction of the mills. We knew that we were going to have a half mill reduction when we voted for the roads. So I don't know. I mean, did the committee have any discussion on that as far as maybe that was kind of going against on how we approved the road mill increase?
You mean to say that next year it's going to be falling off? Is next year our fifth year?
We have one more year.
We have one more year after this year, so.
Is that what you mean?
Yes.
So we have one more year. We're in our fourth year now. So we have
Right.
one more year then. So what would happen next year after the year?
All right, thank you very much. Just need clarification. Okay.
Yeah, so we collect the road millage on the December tax bill for the subsequent fiscal year. So this is the 3rd year of construction, it'll be the 4th year of the millage.
Right.
So,
Okay, thank you.
so some overall highlights of the budget. Calls for consistent staffing levels and consistent services throughout the city. A 3.5% wage increase budgeted consistent with union contracts. Expected increase in property tax revenue due to increases in taxable values. Optimistic projections from the state of Michigan for state shared revenue and Act 51 funding. And expenditures that are experiencing the pressures of inflation that everybody's experiencing. The assessed value of the city went up by 8.8%, which is a testament to the housing market here in the farms. It's the 11th year in a row of increases in assessed value. The overall taxable value of the city increased 5.9%, with cap values that didn't have a sale or any improvements increasing by 5%. The actual CPI was 7.9%, but due to proposal 8, it was going to go up by 5% or inflation, whichever is less. So due to our overall taxable value increase being less than the actual rate of inflation, there's no required heavy rollback of millages this year. But as Councilmember Wood stated, we're voluntarily decreasing our millage by 1/4 mil. So you can see here our tax rate, the total tax rate will be 16.4655 mils, with the decrease being in the operating millage and in the debt millage, with no change in the rubbish and the road millage. This shows our millage rate there in pink compared to comparable cities. As Lev mentioned, we're the lowest of the gross points still, and right in line with Northville and Plymouth as similar cities. How your city tax dollars spent for principal residents. So a lot of people attribute, because they pay their tax bill at City Hall, they attribute all that money to the city. Actually, only 33 cents of every dollar is city taxes, with the other 67 cents going for county and local schools and library villages. General fund revenue, so you see the largest increases being in property taxes and in interest income due to rising interest rates. The large decrease there in federal and state grants is due to FEMA and ARPA money in the current year. The decrease in other revenue is due to prescription drug rebates, where previously we recognized rebates in the general fund. But due to a change in our prescription drug provider, they now be recognized as a net against our overall healthcare costs in the healthcare retention fund. This shows you the same thing in a pie chart. It's obviously taxes being the biggest component of the city revenue, followed by charges for services, state share revenue, and licenses and permits. For expenditures, you can see quite a bit of adjustments here this year, and that's due to the state made a change in the chart of accounts as mandatory for cities and eliminated the other functions category. That's where we charge general items like street lights, liability insurance, and large items like pension and healthcare contributions. Those charges are now being allocated to the different departments based on how much they get used for each of those services. That's why I see the big fluctuation between the different departments. This shows you the same thing graphically. Previously, you would have seen public safety being about 32%, but now we're reallocating the pension and healthcare costs there. You see that jump to 40, with similar adjustments in general government and public works as well. Fund balance, we're anticipating just under $4.7 million in fund balance at the end of June 2023, which will be 24.9% of our proposed budget, which is right in line with the city's fund balance policy. And it means that we're keeping an appropriate amount of money on hand while putting the city's tax dollars to work. For our debt service requirements, we have a little over $900,000 in general government debt service payments, and $560,000 in water and sewer fund debt payments. I'll point out that the 2014 Pier Park refunding bond and the 2014 water refunding bond would be maturing in 2024. Also note that the 2015 water bond there at the bottom, we're currently paying interest only, so those principal payments are going to be kicking in when those ones fall off. So this is something we'll be looking at as we look at the sewer improvement project funding, how to schedule those debt payments. For capital projects, about $3.1 million in capital projects.
Tim, do me a favor, go back to that last slide for a second. So basically what you're saying is the refunding bond on the top line for both, they fall off, but then we expect pretty much matching increases in the others that we're only paying interest on.
Right, so that water improvement bond that's at the bottom, that's interest that you see there's no principal payment, that's gonna kick in when those other ones fall off. So we'll see bigger decrease in the debt payments that are gonna come in 2026 when the harbor bonds fall off.
I can't believe I'm here when they're being paid off. I might have to get my head examined. I was really voted for those.
We look at the amount of principal that we have. What, by charter, I think by charter, we're allowed X amount of debt. Is that correct? How much, do we happen to know what?
I believe it's 10% of your state equalized value, so we're nowhere near.
We're way
under, yeah, it's not an issue. So capital projects, $3.1 million, funded through general fund transfer of $1.4 million, the grant for the seawall of $1.2 million, small amount of interest revenue, $4,000, and the $478,000 use of fund balances to spend the ARPA funds that we have sitting in fund balance. That's going to go towards sidewalk improvement program, $50,000, technology and office improvements, vehicles and heavy equipment, including contributions towards future Vector and rubbish truck placements for reserves. Improvements at Pier Park, City Hall, and Public Works, including replacing repairing the porch at community building, fixing the floors at community building, and redoing the locker rooms at public safety. Road projects, so the road projects is funding from different sources, $1.8 million from the road millage, $1.2 million from Act 51 money from the state, small amount of interest, $1,000, $400,000 from the general fund, and we're going to use some fund balance this year, $300,000, which is money that's left over from prior years. That is expended towards $851,000, which goes towards general road maintenance, including items like snow plow install, minor road repairs, and this overall, this large road pavement program this summer, $2.9 million. For our legacy costs, we have estimated healthcare premiums of $1.1 million. Our budgeting additional contributions of $300,000 towards our long-term liability. On the pension side, $767,000 of required contributions and $475,000 of above and beyond additional contributions. So some summary of our governmental funds, total fund balance, you can see 5.7 million of total fund balance in the general fund, over $1 million in the major and local road funds, and the 1.8 million in the municipal street fund is the funds that will collect on the winter bill for the subsequent year's construction program. And also you see at the bottom, $2.2 million in reserves and capital projects, which is a very good reserve amount for future projects. So that's the end of what I had. So to summarize, it's, we're reducing the tax rate, continuing to fund capital projects, continuing to put money aside for future projects, and funding our pension and healthcare contributions while lowering our tax rate.
All right, as it relates to this portion of budget, are there any questions for Tim?
I just had a question about how does the $50,000 for sidewalk repairs compare to other years? I have gotten a lot of concerns, questions and concerns about just the quality of the sidewalks in the city and whether we could be putting more money into repairing some of our sidewalks.
So that's the same amount of money we had in the current year, 50,000.
Well, I think some of it was just timing. We did have quite a few sidewalks that were repaired, about 100 slabs last fall. And we have a list, of probably 100 right now that are higher than that are on, that we have a PO for. It's a matter of the contractor being available to make those repairs. They've been currently pulled off because they'll be doing some of the curb work on Kirchable with our street resurfacing program. But we have been more aggressive with our sidewalk repairs and continue to do that, and continuing to I include sidewalk repairs as part of the CBO as homes change occupancy.
So so 100 sidewalk slabs being repaired this year is the goal or estimate?
What do we have on the list for this spring?
Well, we've been making a list and they're not all, like 2 inches is the kind of threshold where it becomes legally becomes a trip hazard. But we have a list of over 250 that we want to get, but not all this year. I think we probably got about another 100 before July 1st. I know we didn't use our whole budget.
Yeah, we used about half of the $50,000 in the fall, so we'll probably do another project about the same size.
Yeah, so I have talked to our paving contractor that we normally use for this, and they said they've committed to using up at least that much by the end of July 1st.
I just think it would be helpful to have a number when people ask like how many we've repaired this year and are planning to repair this year. Just
If I recall correctly, weren't we, obviously, this is again obvious, we'll be saying this for 100 years. We were a little bit interrupted during COVID.
Yeah.
And so I think we were a little bit behind for 2020 or 2020, and then we got right back at it.
And also the DTE gas main project was a big factor because they were so unpredictable as where they were going to tear up sidewalks that we kind of suspended it. At the same time, they did eventually replace everything that they pulled off, but that ended in about 2020, and then COVID hit. And so last year was the first year we really kind of got back full swing into.
And just to belabor, but in addition to that, as we've been doing streets as part of our accelerated road report program, so we did Kirby Road, we also addressed the sidewalks on the length of Kirby. I know most of those markings, we see a lot of markings on bridge that have not been completed from last year's paving program.
So I just encourage anybody out there, just you can email the city if you have a curb, or maybe have something that's a sidewalk problem. Take a picture, email it to us. I'm notorious for doing that. So Matt knows he gets this on Saturday and Sundays. Hey, what about this?
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, anybody from the public would like any comments on this agenda item? Seeing none, public comment is closed. What is the pleasure of council on item 5?
Make a motion.
Thank you, Lev.
Motion to approve the proposed tax millage rates and budget as submitted, which is summarized in Tim Rowland's memo dated May 8th, 2023, entitled Proposed Tax Millage Rates and Budget for the year ending June 30th, 2024.
Do I have support?
Support.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 6, consideration of a request to approve water and sewer rates for fiscal year ending June 30, 2024. Lev, you want to start there, or should I turn it straight to Tim?
Well, go ahead and give it to Tim. I mean, I think.
I'm giving you your thunder. There you go. I won't let him steal it
Yeah.
from you.
Yep. Go
So-
right ahead.
Thank you. The proposed water and sewer rates are proposing a 4.5% rate increase. We were passed on a 2.8% increase from Clear Lakes Water Authority on the sewer rates. Our consumption, I upped our consumption estimate mildly from 50.5 million cubic feet, 51.2. And we do have a very significant capital improvements plan this year, water plant generator at $650,000, $1 million in water main replacement at Colonial Court and Hamilton Court, and $250,000 for the sewer lining program. It's also very important to watch our cash flow this year because we're going to be pre-funding the engineering costs on the sewer improvement project. So this shows you historically our water history. So we had a pretty dry summer last year, so water usage was up quite a bit to almost 54 million we're projecting this year. But it fluctuated a lot based on the weather over the summer, so we use a conservative estimate of 51.2. These are the proposed rates. There's different components to the rate. The water rate at the top is the variable rate. The second rate is for water improvements, which is to fund the water mains and the improvements to the generator. The sewer rate, that's for the sewer rates passed on by the Lakes Water Authority. And the sewer improvement is to fund the bond issue. And the flat rate is the flat rate based on we will have no usage.
So, Tim, I'm sorry, just to kind of flesh out the idea between water and water improvement. Water goes to pay for what?
Goes to pay for water, any of the cost of the treatment plant, where the water improvement rate is specifically for capital improvements.
And improvement.
Like water mains, improvements to the water plant, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Big ticket capital items. So what that means to the residents, the minimum bill, which is 7 units, they would see an increase of $5.80 on their bi-monthly bill, for a total annual increase of $34.80. But for the average user who use 24 units every 2 months, it'd be an increase of $13.77 every 2 months, or $82.62 per year.
Tim, when was the last increase? Do you know that?
The increase last year by about 5%.
And the percentage on this one is?
4.5.
Thank you.
And again, I mean, I think it's important to note that not all that rate is reflective of what we're charging.
Right.
Detroit is charging us 2.8%. Is that what?
That was the increase from the Clear Lakes Water Authority. That proportion of the rate is 55 cents out of the $55 out of 103. So over half of the rate is that pass through for the sewage rate.
Yeah, we should make sure somehow we explain that in our on the website or something.
We're still tied to sewage to GLB rates.
Right.
All right. Is that it?
That's it.
All right. Any questions from council other than those expressed? Any questions from the public? Seeing none, public comment is closed. What is Mr. Wood? Motion again.
Motion to approve the proposed water and sewer rate schedule become effective for all bills rendered after July 1st of this year, which includes an increase of $4.69 per 1,000 cubic feet of actual metered water usage, and also an increase of $2.52 per billing cycle in the flat rate charge for service.
Is there support?
Support.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 7, consideration of a request to approve recycling rates for fiscal year ending June 30, 2024.
That's a wash. I mean, we're not charging anything extra, so.
Right. So we're under a contract through September of 2026 with 3% annual increases in our charge. We increased our fee last year from $8.50 to $12 bi-monthly. And that $12 fee is good enough to cover us for this year, so there's no proposed increase.
All right, any questions from council? Anybody in the public? Public comment is closed. Pleasure of council, Mr. Wood.
No. Motion to approve residential recycling rate of $12 per bi-monthly billing cycle per household for all bills rendered after July 1st, 2023.
I'll second that.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 8, consideration of a request to approve a municipal parking app and MO lot rate changes. Very deja vu. Back to Tim, all right.
So at the last council meeting, we were directed to do more research into the mobile app for the MO lot. So we went back to Passport, which is the company that offers the mobile app that they offer in Grosse Pointe City. And they offered to allow us to piggyback on Grosse Pointe City's system, where they essentially add MO lot as a zone in their system. And in turn, they could offer us the 25-cent convenience fee instead of the 45 cents they had originally proposed. So parkers who choose to utilize the app would pay a 25-cent fee on top of the rates. And the city would also be charged on the city side 30 cents per transaction plus 2.9%. Everybody, don't want the fees only for people who use the app. Anybody can still use the pay stations for no additional fees. So I did get a quote from Park Mobile, who's a competitor for Passport, and they quoted 45 cents for the convenience fee to the residents as well.
So when I parked in the village this weekend, they have their mobile app sticker on their actual meters. Is that something we look at in the future?
So we'll have signage on the MO lot, but we are looking in the future to move it onto the hill as well. Those would be, actually get rid of the meters, potentially to have pay stations.
Pay station. Okay. Any other questions from council?
Yeah, how do we go about enforcing this now?
So the parking enforcement have initially, you can do it on an Android phone where they have to type in a license plate and it'll tell if it's paid or not. But if we go forward and expand it onto Pershable, we could get a more robust parking enforcement system that would be able to handle the license plates better.
It'll say expired, send an expired notice, will it not?
I believe so, yeah.
Has there been any fall off on enforcement in other cities that you know of? In other words, when you go to the MO lot, you get your ticket and then you give it to the lady. Okay, obviously that's the enforcement, you're paying right there. But is an app like this, is there like a fall off?
Yeah, you have to do enforcement. Obviously, if people get wind that there's no enforcement, they're not gonna pay. So it comes down to enforcement.
You're cool with that?
We'll handle it.
Okay.
You'll figure it out. Any other questions from council?
Great job.
Anybody in the public? All right, public comment is closed. Anyone want to make a motion on item 8? Yeah. I'll volunteer.
Sure,
Le's getting tired down there.
I will say, I'll let Lev go. I'm going to I'd like to motion to authorize an agreement with Passport Mobile Parking to provide a payment application for the municipal lot and further to increase the municipal lot parking rates as proposed in the memo dated, I guess, May 8th.
Yeah. All right, is there support? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Consideration of a fire response automatic mutual aid agreement. Watch.
Yeah. So I'll give a real simple explanation of this because I know this looks complicated and foreign to anyone outside of what we do. And then if need be, I'll hand it off to Andy, who runs the fire division, Chris, who is the PSO/fire inspector /fire investigator, which is the equivalent of a firefighter detective, who is responsible for putting most of this together for us. So about a year ago, we had a meeting at the Pier Park attended by all public safety directors, some high-level road command officers, and fire inspectors. The impetus of the meeting was to figure out a way to just get personnel and resources to working fires more quickly. The solution is rather simple, and everybody was in agreement. So the way we currently do it is, first alarm is the city of origin. So if there's a fire at 336 Kirby, we get the call, scout cars pull up, smoke coming from the east, we confirm it's a fire, the trucks are rolling. The boss on scene then calls second alarm. So
So say Grosse Pointe City then rolls on it, then eventually calls third alarm. Well, you know, in my 3+ decades here, we almost always need 3 alarms on a working structure fire, be it residential, commercial, church, what have you, minimum of 3 alarms. So we're essentially turning a third alarm response into a first alarm response. So now on a working fire, car pulls up, confirms it's a working fire, 3 cities roll. Okay, instead of going to this domino process of call second, call third, sometimes call fourth, a third alarm is now a first alarm. It just makes sense. So everybody is en route more quickly. A second alarm would represent a fourth alarm. And then beyond that, you can call for what you need. But, you know, Chris was a huge proponent of this. He put together a lot of the language with assistance from Bill. And everybody's in agreement that it's gonna get people and equipment there more quickly. As we've said over the years, you know, fires increase in size in just seconds. And so it just makes sense. As far as the actual verbiage in the automatic aid agreements, it's making a formal declaration of the changes as well as reiterating things like the personnel commitments, the training that's going to be done. We're going to attempt to train together on more things, or at least if we're not training together at a physical location, we're all training within our departments on the same things each month, so that everybody is up to speed on the same training, doing the same things, trying to put everybody on the same topics each month. So with that, I can hand it off to Andy. I don't know how much more there is to cover, but whatever you want to expand on.
One thing, dispatching. Right now, we have 5 different cities, and they'll dispatch 5 different ways at working fires. And as being an incident commander at fire scenes, you know, it's very noisy, it's very operational. I have to hear keywords, and when I hear 5 different departments saying the same thing 5 different ways, it gets very confusing. So what this also addresses is a very singular way of dispatching fire alarms for all the cities involved. So Grosse Pointe City, Woods, Park, us will all use the same verbal language, putting out this, and there's an example in here on how we would do that procedure. So it simplifies things. It's definitely more professional. It gets us up to speed. It's fun.
All right. Any questions from council?
I just had a question. I know that we end up responding because of our pumper to a lot of, and I just want to make sure that this is, I can see how this is in the best interest of all of our surrounding communities, given the high quality public safety team we have here. And it sounds like you guys are comfortable with it, but I want to make sure that the other members are also essentially pulling their weight.
So, yeah, let me ask you, we've.
I think a lot of that has to do with us being centrally located, where we get pulled to the left, we get pulled to the right, where the park only really goes one way, and that's, unfortunately, we're in the best location.
So we are. I don't want to say this out loud, but we're gonna work with the other Grosse Pointes.
And we
Just because they understand that because of our ladder truck and our great team, we go to every fire. And it is a little burdensome on our community as compared to the other 4, because it seems that we're almost at every single fire. So for us, this isn't a tremendous change for us because we usually get called in on almost everything, right?
Yeah, it's not changing what we currently send. If there's a fire in Grosse Pointe Park right now, we're third alarm. We're gonna get called. Now we're just going as soon as they confirm it's a fire. So it's not changing what we're sending. It's just sending them sooner.
It's literally us just trying to maybe talk to the other Grosse Pointes about those of us who have ladder trucks carry a little bit more burden than the others that don't. And so we do expend more resources. And so I think I'll leave it to Shane, and there's wonderful negotiation skills with the other city managers to extract
There
a
was a
fair price.
conversation held this morning with city managers, so we are talking about that. You know, several of them also have had significant equipment expenses. A new ladder truck is roughly $1.5 million. And so we're looking at how, is there a way to, try to share some of those costs that mutually benefit all the communities.
The ultimate goal of this is to incur less damage at fires, put them out more quickly, which means less exposure to hazards for the firefighters as well. Because if you get to a fire later and you're walking into a building that's been burning for 10 minutes versus 4 minutes or 5 minutes, it's less risk to us as well. So it's a win-win all around in terms of lessening the amount of damage, hopefully getting the fire out more quickly, and hopefully putting us at less risk. If we can all get there more quickly, that's the goal. So.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion.
Sure.
Share the merger.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the fire response.
Anybody in the public have any comments? All right, public comment is closed. Now you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion to approve the fire response automatic mutual aid agreement of May 8th, 2023.
Wait for support.
Support.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Item 10, resolution approving the designation of the Pier Park Community Building as the polling location for combined precinct 1, 2, 4 and combined precinct 3 and 5 for the November 7, 2023 city election. Mr. Kazicki.
Yes, this matters back before you again. And at the last meeting, the primary concern was the issue of parking close to the building so that our voters wouldn't have to walk. We went and looked at some of the statistical data, and once it was realized it would be an uncontested election, we utilized the data from the 2015 local city election, and we had a turnout of 10.68%. So we applied that to a number of our registered voters, assuming 50% of the voters vote absentee, which is on the low end potentially. We estimate that over a 13-hour day, we're going to have 38 voters per hour. It's a short ballot, so that translates into a quick in and out 15 minutes. So every 15 minutes, 10 voters voting. And at the parking directly adjacent to the building has 22 parking spaces. And then in addition to those 22 regular spaces, there's 2 handicap spaces. So there is an additional, the map kind of shows where the additional parking is if people want to park farther away. But the primary benefit of this is logistically, it makes the election a lot more easy to manage.
I should just to point out too, this is kind of somewhat of a learning curve too of how that site would be utilized as a board voting precinct, a joint precinct. And this was kind of an ideal election that kind of fell in our lap that it will be very manageable in terms of handling voters. And this is only for this cycle, this November election, I should point out, for this year. Next year, there is changes in voting law. We're still waiting some of those changes, how it will impact us. Early voting will be going into effect in 2024. And so we will be back before City Council with recommendations for a long-term setup for our precincts.
Yes, Lev.
All of us in this whole room have been hearing for the last any number of years about, the election frauds and stuff like that never happened, and all the problems with people being having a harder time voting and everything. And initially, I thought this doesn't seem to have very good optics, having everybody leave their familiar voting locations to come to one central spot. But I'm persuaded that because it's an uncontested election, only 500, did you say, Derek, voted last time?
10.68%.
10%, okay.
Which is
a small number. But then there's other things like somebody comes to the Pier Park and they forgot their badge, right? And so are we gonna be pretty liberal about letting people come in and
not checking?
Yeah, that was
not checking.
Yes.
They won't be checking passes.
Okay. And then there'll be, you know, instead of having to park out there by the swimming pool, they'll be able to go back into the area and drive back and stuff like that. And so I guess I'm persuaded, you know, I'm persuaded with some reluctance. So.
I have no problem approving this for this November. I'm not in favor of doing it on a permanent basis at all, for all the reasons that my colleague expressed, but also some just feedback from other people. I don't think it's a good thing to do. I think it was deterrent to voting, it would be confusing people. People vote here by habit. A lot of it by habit, by going to their precinct. And I think there's a danger of lessening of voter turnout. I'm willing, though, to be wrong. So I'm going to say, let's go ahead for November to do this. I don't think the park is a good place for polling precinct.
I just want to remind people too, we have early voting. I vote almost every time Saturday before the Tuesday election. I walk in here and cast my ballot because I know it's going to be easy to get in and out. Or on election day, because the last elections we've had 70% vote AV. So we have no reason absentee balloting in Michigan. So all that being said, there's no reason not to vote because you have many options. But I agree that I would rather find if we were going to consolidate something that doesn't, you know, people require people to go, you know, think that they have to have a pass when they don't. I know we should be very clear about that when we publish it. You're only going to be, you get the drive-in, no problem. But I know the law is changing, so we'll probably have to look at different precincts permanently next year once we know what those laws are. So as my colleagues, I'm okay with this one, but not so comfortable in the future.
No.
I'll just say, if I may, I spent a good amount of time talking to residents about this because I definitely raised some concerns about it the last time around. And for the most part, I think a lot of residents feel positive about the change. I think there are some reservations that many have. And I'm not one, I think, again, I've been on council about 4 years now. There haven't been a lot of resolutions that I've voted on principle. And this is probably one of those instances where I can understand the very reasonable argument for it. I would be vehemently opposed to this in a more contested election. But given the fact that it sounds like from the rest of this council, it's likely that this is going to pass. I'm going to vote no on this one.
Lou, before we vote, I think it should be mentioned that Andy Durbin sent a letter to us dated April 20th, and he said that I suggest the city administration and city council consider having 2 polling locations, Pier Park and Richard or Brownell.
Yeah, and I think that's a good idea. When we have to deal with the question of precincts in the future, I think we definitely we need to be conscious of that and the broader thing. And the only thing I'll just add to what I said was, again, I think that there's a lot of support. There is support for this move. I just want to make sure that there's a recognition of some difference of opinion.
No, I use a different opinion here. I think if it was contested, I don't think it'd be happening.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right, anybody in the public want to talk on this item? Seeing none, public comment is closed. Do I have a motion on resolution approving the use of the Pier Park for consolidated precincts 1, 2, 4 and combined precinct 3 and 5 for this November 7, 2023 city election only?
Only in there?
Yes, I said only.
Thank you.
Do I hear so moved?
I'll make that motion, Louis.
Do I hear support?
Support.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. Consent agenda, does anybody want anything taken out of the consent
You're gonna
agenda?
hate me, Mr. Mayor, but I do have to have, I have a couple questions to pull out the farms picnic tables.
Picnic tables.
Wow.
They're quick, they'll be
That's a
quick.
deep one. Deep cut, that.
Leaving it? All right, anybody else? All right, we'll take item D out. Do I have a motion to approve consent agenda items A, B, C, E, F, G, H?
I will make that motion.
Anybody in support?
Support.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, now, item 11D, consideration of request to purchase picnic tables for Pier Park.
I know.
Beth, tell us why you don't like picnic tables.
All right, no. I just had a couple questions from people that are on the Parks and Recreation Committee, because this was never before the committee. Okay,
Okay.
all right. I understand that, the age of it, but, and I know that, yes, I should have gone down there and looked at the picnic table. But again, just to ask a couple different questions. In total, how many picnic tables do we have? Are they all being replaced?
No, they're not. This represents about half of the picnic tables. Currently, it's a hybrid right now. There are wood tables that are, in reality, I actually talked to the former Parks and Rec director. He said they were purchased about 30 years ago, the wood ones. Subsequently, we had purchased metal tables, so about half and half. My preference is to replace all of them. The wood ones, clearly are afraid. Either, we try to paint them each year and try to spruce them up, but they're very tired.
There's no question about it. I think
The metal ones as well, I think our intent would be to phase out the metal ones and go all with consistent tables. It's a brown surface, it's a composite, it's warranted. We did request a sample table so we could assemble it, kick it around, feel it, the weight, move it. And this was, really something that we felt was the sturdiest, and we looked at cost.
And I'm not disputing the cost. I'm getting, my questions from two members of the Park and Recreation Committee were the following. One is a replacement for all, you've answered that question. Okay, the second is that so now you're gonna have, again, I'm part of the messenger here, okay? Representing the constituency. So now you're gonna have brown, a composite brown. So we went to the park to take a look at those picnic tables. Yes, I've been spending a lot of time on picnic tables, too much. All right, so,
Dedication.
and then you have green.
So the green will be gone. The green will be eliminated.
That's the wood.
The wood will be, those are the wood tables, so those would go away and then be replaced
And
with.
the other question they have is, so that's, okay, that answers that. Should this have gone to the Parks and Recreation Committee, maybe for at least something, maybe not?
Yeah.
Or is it a staffing thing and we just don't do that?
There was a picnic table that we felt comfortable with. I think what we could do, and I don't have a problem with, if we approve it contingent upon review from the Parks and Harbor Committee, if we'd like to.
And actually, I'm not asking it because I'm not the chair of the Parks and Recreation Committee, so that's fine. The other question I have, and I will stop here, but again, these are questions from a committee, so you have to address them, all right?
I would encourage that.
I think that makes sense.
What will happen to the picnic tables, the wooden picnic tables? Are they destroyed? Are they be sold? Can people buy them?
I don't think we haven't really.
I don't want to sell. Liability, nope, I'll take out.
All right, again, just some questions. Thank you very much.
I would agree with going into the Parks and Rec, because I'm thinking, why not the green composite?
No, believe me, there could be pushback on that. Yeah.
Green versus brown, you mean? Or-
Yeah, I want green, yeah, but it doesn't matter. The brown is very nice looking, okay?
But we're okay with consensus too. So that, I think the important thing is consistency. If we can get consistency, and these are gonna be we want less maintenance each year and having to, and cleaning. I think the idea too is being to clean the surface on a more regular
We won't have
basis.
splinters.
Right.
Well, they're more comfortable.
All right, will anyone move to approve the expenditure of no more than $45,000 for picnic tables as set forth in the May 8, 2022 memo from Chris 2023? Just read it. Yes, from Chris Gladys, so moved. Do I support? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for indulging me.
Oh, no, it's fine. Item 12 reports, we got the financial report attached to our packet. Mr. Reese, other business?
I'm gonna ask,
Just to be clear, when we removed the consent agenda, I just want to make sure that the only exception was D, because we didn't list
D.
out I, when you read through
I don't-
it. I just want to make sure that that was approved as part of the consent agenda.
Where's I?
Well, no, it should be, because I'm reading the one that was put on my desk that says final, that says final.
Okay, sorry, okay, great, never mind. Thank you.
All right. I's good. Can we amend? I'll amend my.
No, it's
motion.
fine, I don't know which, we got this one.
Yeah,
so
I know,
it's-
I don't know which I got, yes. Which one was outside for the public meeting? Did it have I on it?
No, it was the correct one. We updated it, we removed. the,
With I.
Citizen appointment of retirements.
I got it, but you had the National Gun Violence Awareness Day on it, correct,
Yes.
right?
Yeah,
Yes,
correct.
because that's H,
Okay, all
because
right,
that's
good.
H.
All right, great, got it.
Perfect.
Thank
Yep.
you.
All right, other business, Mr. Reese.
I am gonna ask, city council to indulge a very brief closed session to discuss potential purchase of real estate.
Why not?
Shouldn't be more than 5 minutes.
Oh,
And
no
no action will
problem.
be taken.
Promises,
following this
promises,
meeting.
promises.
Come on, we can stay until 10.
I have no problem.
Anybody else have other business?
I just, can I, before we go, I just want to, I know we had some citizens in the audience.
Just left.
Who just left from the Mom Demand Action Group. I appreciate them, and they're offering up the National Gun Violence Awareness Day. Encourage folks who are able to wear orange on June 2nd. Thank you.
I want to thank the Grosse Pointe Chamber of Commerce for throwing a over-the-top successful Mayor's Prayer Breakfast on the National Day of Prayer on Thursday. Sold out 210 tickets, probably could have sold close to 270 if they, 260 if they had a bigger room to do it. JT Mesta was a great speaker, young man who's accomplished a lot over a lot of hurdles. And so I think next year they'll be looking for a larger venue. But the chamber really has done a nice job picking that up and taking the mantle and really getting that well run. And again, I'll follow up with Lev. I just want to thank the admin on the budget and everything. You guys do a great job every year. It makes our jobs a lot easier to get a budget that makes sense. And you know, we should all be very proud of how good, as council members and as citizens, how well administration, you guys, all of you, all the departments do. You know, we're about as a well-oiled machine as they get. It's knock on wood, it never changes, but thank you very much for what you own.
You're.
Any business from the public? Sure, come on up. Name and address, please.
Hi, I don't know what matters. I'm not from here, but 21821 Elder, St. Clair Shores.
Okay.
My name is Lindsay Potts, and I am with the Autism Society of Greater Detroit. And we're really just going around to different city council meetings in our service area and trying to like introduce ourselves and get, you know, awareness of us being here. About 8 years ago, a small handful of chapters of the Autism Society closed their doors, and our parent organization, Autism Society of America, went through restructuring. And they are moving towards a model where they have one autism society for each state. And we are the state affiliate now. And we hope to, within the next 5 years, cover all of Michigan. Right now, we cover Oakland, Macomb, Wayne, St. Clair, and Washington counties. Our main purpose is connection between the community service organizations, state services, and those affected by ASD. We offer a 24/7 information referral line and resources on our website. We have local initiatives too, including social meetups and virtual support groups. We're also working on a youth-led therapeutic garden in Center Line right now. And we just did a community autism awareness month event with the Tigers. And just wanted to, if anybody wants more information about our resources and how to sign up if you want to volunteer for any of our projects, you can go to our website. It's www.autismsocietygreaterdetroit.org. And
That's it for me.
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming in, letting us know.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anybody else in the public? Seeing none, public comment is closed. Do I have a motion to go into closed session to discuss real estate matters?
Second.
Okay, Derek, roll call, I think we have to do it for this.
Councilmember Wood.
Yes.
Councilmember Conrad. Wilson,
Yes.
Councilmember Ritchie.
Yes.
Mayor Carroll.
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd.
Yes.
Councilmember Sorrell.
Yes.
Just for the public, we will not be reconvening. The public meeting is adjourned. Thank you.